Remember this thing? It's been a while. I haven't done anything to it. Time's been passing by, work got really busy. We got the new Mercury project, which has not really started as planned. Things haven't been going my way on that one, but more on that, later. It's time. We've got to get in there and attach this body to the subframe that we finished in the last video. I think that was the last video. I think it was the last video. I'm not sure. Anyway, today we're going to dive in and look at how the body needs to be attached to that subframe to keep everything in this orientation so that when we take out the bracing that's been in the cowl forever and any other temporary bracing, the body stays, Model T shaped and doesn't go all cattywampus again. So anyway, welcome to Between the Sharks. Let's take a closer look. Let's just take a moment to remind, well, even me, what we have done here. A lot of stuff has been temporarily kind of tacked in place, but I think some of those temporary things are unfortunately going to become, the prototype will become the real thing just based on the ramifications of us, say, cutting this brace out. I don't know what would move if I did that. So, but let's assess. Also, here's a Reader's Digest version of what we're trying to do here for anyone that is new. Hey, welcome. Thanks for tagging along. And anyone who maybe hasn't done hot rod before but is thinking about it. So the short version of what's going on here is we have the body, which is all the sheet metal tin, and we have a subframe that, in this particular case, the one that came with the car was super rotten. So we've built a new one that is similar but slightly different than the original. That said, we have to attach the body to the subframe. In the Ford factory, that would have been done with a variety of metal brackets and some wood pieces to stabilize the body. And if you've ever seen the videos of the old factory footage, you see the chassis rolling along the assembly line, and then in would come a body being lifted in and placed down on it. The way the body maintained its shape for that process was by being attached to the subframe, which was landed onto the actual frame, all bolted together. Instant car, Viola. We have to make sure our body is attached to our subframe so that we can do the exact same thing in this garage and move this Model T body onto this Model A frame. So back in the Wayback One machine, I spent 6 years, 42 months, and 11 days trying to make this piece of junk cowl somehow unrack itself and make it the shape of Model T again. In doing so, I needed to brace this thing, well, like in all the ways that it is braced. In the front there on both sides, we have it tacked to the subframe. I've got a really ugly piece of 1x2 steel attaching the missing rotten metal to the subframe. Moving back, I've attached just what were to be temporary brackets. Basically, I gotta do this end. It's keeping all of our panels attached to the subframe, mostly at the bottom, so that this particular shape is correct. Don't mind the door. We'll deal with that. We sort of just need to revisit everything and make sure that either A, it's welded well enough to be permanent, or B, we make a new bracket or a new holder honor piece to keep it, in the shape that we want. A little bit of a disclaimer. Some of the stuff I'm gonna do is stuff that I would have frowned upon in, well, most of the rest of my life. But at this point, I'm just trying to preserve as much Henry Ford steel as we can. I've said that a bunch of times in a bunch of different videos. Hopefully, if you're doing a car like this, there are some things you might be able to do with the same amount of effort that will result in something better quality than what I'm about to do. Now, the principles are still the same about what needs to attach to what and why. But the method on this one, I'm doing it a little differently than I have ever done. So you will see me weld through rusty metal, and you will see me sort of bubble gum some stuff together. And that's not... Here's the thing. You fellas may remember a few years ago when the whole rat rod thing was really popular. I can't say I ever got on board with that. I guess you do what you want with your own car. But to me, that was exemplified by either taking a nice car and painting it flat black, because that was rat roddy, accessorizing something with like little plastic rats or, you know, bad faux patina sign writing or whatever, or really just showing off bad craftsmanship and cobbling something together and not even making an attempt to sort of improve on it, but just running it, you know, as barely slapped together as possible. And that's not what we're trying to do here, really. It occurred to me that, you know, this car, there's enough of it there that it really could be turned into a super nice car, but by the time you did that, I'm not sure how much Henry Ford steel would actually be left. If I was a better metal shaper and a better fabricator, these panels are not that complicated, I suppose, and they could all be remade, but it's sort of like the ship of Theseus. At what point, when you've replaced enough of it, is it no longer really a 27 Ford? I'm just saying, take what I'm doing and kind of squint at it and apply it to your project the way that you need to. Because you will need to build a subframe, and you will need to attach your body to it. But just exactly how, you know, should really, A, meet your craftsmanship standard, meet your finish standard, and maybe some of that should be based on, you know, the old starting point. Enough yakking. Let's go. All right, I don't know if this is gonna be helpful for anyone, but this is a bracket I recycled, the little triangle bracket. The holes were where the rivets go, and they were riveted through the firewall. At this point, I'm just gonna reuse that bracket and weld it into place. Now, there is the remnants of this guy, and there was one on either side, over here and over here. Now, it's my habit at this point to remove those because A, those cars are really small. B, the last little Model T thing I built was channeled, so I needed every inch of room to get the clutch and everything worked out. So, you know, you guys do you, depends on the body you have, depends on the subframe. I certainly wouldn't remove it if everything was original and in good shape. But if you're dealing with a jalopy like this, you can get a little bit of extra room for your passengers by taking that out and still make it pretty strong, but that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna dive in here and then weld these up, you know, more solid-like. All right, so the front little triangle bracket pieces to the firewall are welded in now. So the next point of attachment for this body, both stock and for our modified version, is this door pillar guy here. For me, they were rotten off on both sides, here and here, and it turned out that a piece of 1 inch by 2 inch box steel seemed to make up the gap. These welds are terrible. I understand that. I'm not proud of it. These were intended to be temporary so that I could sort of get the body back into a shape. You know, go back and check out the old videos, see how bad it was. At this point, I think I'm gonna make those permanent, clean up those welds, and yeah, just kind of let them be. Those are more welded, more permanently welded. My philosophy all along, if you haven't watched the previous videos, is if I'm just tacking things together to try to make sure the shape is right, 50% of the time I've got to cut those tacks back out and move something because, you know, by the time I've worked my way around, something's just a little off or I can improve it. That said, most of these tacks are in places that I can cut strategically. So what I'm doing is going back in and welding the parts that I didn't weld before that are going to be much harder to cut if I'm screwing this up right now. You know, this is janky. Not the best work. As poor of a job as it is what was on the car from the last set of Bubbos or whoever, you know, had hot rod dreams. Normally I would just replace it with something slightly better, but if we're being completely fair about it, they're the right shape, they're way strong enough, and nobody will ever see them because there'll be a seat right there. And I don't think there is anything that's not structural about them. So I'm gonna use them, and they just stay as one piece of history on the car. You know, like, yeah, we could do better, but in this case, like, Why? What are we trying to prove here? We're gonna need a seat pan in here. Why is that important? Well, because we've attached our posts behind the door on both sides. So in theory, we're attached to the subframe here, we're attached to the subframe here, and we are attached to the subframe right chomp. This is kind of tacked in. This seat frame needs some support, but something that will make this whole area way stronger, and it does indeed need to be strong because it's the support for the rear doors, is a box that goes from here, back this way, over and back. It's always easy to raise a seat. You can pad it, you can add more foam, which is never gonna hurt in a car, you know, running old Ford suspension and transverse springs. You can build a box, you know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna, you can make it taller. Making it shorter, that, my friends, is a magic trick. Span, I am having trouble today. Golly. Lost my Sharpie again. Oh, it's in the back pocket. We still got it. We're in business. I'm just too lazy to take this out to the chop saw and run an extension cord and plug it in, so we're gonna do it with a grinder, and that will be good enough for us today. Let me use this moment to do a little safety bulletin and say, you know, remember to use eye protection when you're cutting steel, because it's hard to do this kind of hobby stuff if you can't see, and on top of that, if you get a chunk of steel in your eye, it's uncomfortable and it's not fun to spend the afternoon trying to fish it out with a rare earth magnet. Ask me how I know. I highly recommend ear protection because, well, hearing is good and it's hard to get back, and if not being able to hear was bad enough, it turns out your loved ones won't be very sympathetic to you not being able to hear. In fact, they'll be really annoyed by the fact that you can never hear what they say. If you don't believe me, just ask my girlfriend. Spider check. It's that time of year around here. Stop. So personally, I find it easier to go through the spine or the back or the pointy bit of the angle iron. I don't know how you guys do it, but for me, it seems to tax the tools less, no matter which tool you're using. Disaster. All right, so I've got it just jammed in there. I'm gonna tack it in and we're gonna, you know, we'll see how this develops. All right, there we go. So it's sort of, you know, this is just for illustrative purposes only, but it's the beginning of a seat pan, right? So we're adding structure right to left with the body, but if we had a piece of plywood that went from here over to here, we tuck in real nice, and then we can upholster it as much as we need. We have more than enough room to upholster it this way as well. Fellas, now we've got to figure out how to make this seat, you know, not do that. Well, this car has been about folded in half 6.72 times. It really has bent right down the center a bunch. It's cracked from here to here. It's cracking up from the bottom, the first 6 inches. There's not a lot left. I don't really know exactly how to do this, but I'm having a thought here. I'm thinking if we use some 1x1 or some 1x2 and kind of, you know, tack her on there and then tie it into our seat frame down at the bottom like so, that will indeed give us some kind of structure. You want to be able to lean back against this without thinking you're gonna fold the whole car in on itself. Plan 78.62 part G. I found this 3/4 by 3/4 that I had laying around. I'm leaning towards it now because this lip right here, I can stick my finger in there, it's about 3/4 inch total to the outside. And I have apparently measured this before because I have a mark, so we're calling that center. I'm not gonna double check because we're just gonna go with that. Right. Guys, it's Sunday. There should be no arithmetic on Sunday. Oh, I don't want to take this clamp off, but I need it. So they do make new one's of these guys. Howells, I think, sells it. Maybe somebody else, but let's take a look at, you know, there's... But we're not messing with the new stuff because that's, you know, it's 100 years to get that way. God, it's sloppy, but we're gonna try to preserve it. Somebody remind me to buy more welding wire. Whoa, more welding wire, because that was the last one. Like, I always keep a spare. How's my spare? Never buy just one spool of welding wire. What do you, like, what, are you gonna stop doing it one day? All right, fellas, so here's where we are. I have placed these 1 foot on center. That's kind of basically in the middle of, I don't know, in thirds, behind the backs of the passenger and the driver in theory. But if you put your eyeballs on it, you can see that there is a bit of a curve here, quite a bit. Similar on both sides, which, you know, you really can see kind of the compounditude of this. So it may flatten out in the middle, but where I have these 1 foot in from the side of the car and 1 foot in from the center of the car, that we're starting to get into that curve that brings it back around to the front. As a result, we're gonna need to do a couple of pie cuts on these things. You know, the way that I do pie cuts, I guess. Let's see if I can show you fellas. So I kind of eyeball it. And we obviously need one at the worst point, where we're the highest off of our back end. And then we need to sort of like work out from there, sort of like so, and then maybe so, and then, you know, it's not exact science. That should be enough. We'll match it on both sides. Let's try that out. All right, so we're starting to develop a shape here. It's a little weird. I'm not 100% convinced it's right, but it's hammered, but it is at least equal. So I'm gonna go ahead and tack these guys in, maybe hit a couple of these, make sure they're closed. Then we'll just need to make some brackety guys that go from our uprights here to our seat pan here, and that'll hold, you know, that in orientation, and then we'll just add some structure. Why am I telling you what we're gonna do? You're gonna see it in just a second. Let's do this part. Better than it was. Obviously, this thing is still floating around, but, you know, once we find a way to attach this to this, we're gonna be in significantly better shape. We're just gonna have to, you know, put it to where we want. So this is my solution. Because I don't really know the shape of this, I'm making it up as I go. I've got our seat pan thing running straight across. I've just added this piece of 1-inch box steel. If I slide, oh, boy howdy. It is hot. Hot in here. So we are a bajillion times better. Well, turns out it has not fixed itself. What we have is rusty and bent. Not in that particular order, but, you know, this is loose. It's rusted off and broken. This one is more better than the other one, but, you know, for the sake of preservation, I don't see why I can't use these bent thingies and just make them work. The issue at hand is that they don't really reach the subframe, well, because they rusted off. All right, so the basic truth is I got to extend this about 3/4 of an inch to attach it to the subframe. I have 3/4 inch angle, I have 3/4 inch square stock. Frankly, I don't think it makes any difference. It'll all hold together. that's life when you're trying to use rusty bent stuff. The upper part of it's kind of neat, and if any of that's exposed, depending on how I do a seat back here, that's kind of cool. The only other option is to just build a new piece. All right, so after very little deliberation, I decided to just jump in and go with the angle iron. I think it'll fit, it'll be more than strong enough, it'll get this moved on, and well, I'm ready to move on. It is 90 degrees in the garage, tin building, toaster today. I'm losing the little bit of focus that I had here. Can't find my gloves. Found them. This is the kind of project you just gotta keep going and sneak up on it. This is a disaster, guys. I'm losing it today. I believe my brain is just melting. It's stabbing me now. Put it somewhere else. It's stabbing me later. All right. Well, it's at least tacked. Let's go and get this other side and see if we can, you know. Nope, not firing on all cylinders. Got that sneaking feeling that the odds of me hurting myself have just increased dramatically. But we're gonna keep going. All right. None of this is the finest work I've ever done, but that's all right. It'll do. I think we're close to it. We're better than we used to be. That's for dang sure. All right, gang. I think 4 to 5 hours of welding in 90-degree weather it's done me in. Maybe I'm out of practice. You gotta know yourself, because really, if I keep going on, I'm likely to either hurt myself or just do a, terrible job at something that I'm gonna have to redo. Anyway, however, we did push through enough to get everything in the back tacked a little more, but everything up to the front seat is in way better shape. Still, we're not gonna say done here, but better, way better. So what I'm thinking is to increase the old motivation on this here project. I think after all this time, it's been on the table for months at this point, we can probably slide it onto the frame. I think it's time that we kind of made this look like a hot rod again, or at least mock it up. It would actually be for the first time, really. But I think a mock-up will do the old brain pan good to see the potential again and really take a look at, what this thing could/will be. Keep struggling through your projects out there. It's gonna get better. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody watching this channel. It's really neat. If you haven't subscribed, please consider it. It really does help things out. Apparently likes and comments and stuff do too, and there are a lot more of those than I ever thought there'd be. So again, thanks everybody. We will see you next time on Between the Sharks, and hopefully we can mock this car up. And we also will be back on the Mercury sooner than later. Anyway, have a great week, everybody. Thanks for watching.